Hi, I'm Robert Urich, and this is Boatworks.
And breathing boat is quite a thrill for me and my wife. We worked hard for this moment. She's 95 feet long overall with a 75-foot waterline, built out of aluminum. She carries 4,400 square feet of working sail with a mast height of 117 feet. Completely hydraulic sailing system for trimming and setting sails. We're 428 miles from Bermuda. We put in our waypoint, our latitude and longitude where we want to go in Bermuda, into the GPS.
The sea's pretty calm. It's very nice, in fact. Filling in from behind us, we've been lucky with the wind behind us, but not quite enough to set full sail, so we're still motoring along.
Southbound 2, that's 33 degrees, 28 minutes north, 67 degrees, 50 minutes west.
We're about 138 miles from our destination. How copy?
Roger, good copy. Let's see if you held in there. You probably had some fairly steady breezes, although they might have gotten a little bit fluky this afternoon. Over.
Roger, right now we've got real light northwesterlies, about 5 to 10, over.
So a bit of moderation for the next 24 to 36 hours, and I think we'll be back to generally winds averaging near the 20-knot range.
Roger, Roger, Herb, that sounds real good. That sounds like a good breeze for an approach. We should be in sometime about late afternoon tomorrow, over.
Roger, Roger, that's great. In the meantime, have a safe arrival.
Thanks much, Herb. Casting center. The guy's amazing. If he tells you that the wind's going to come up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you better be standing on deck because it's going to come up. That's good. Bermuda Harbor Radio, sailing vessel Valkyrie, over.
Roger, sir. Good morning. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Roger. We're approaching Bermuda from the west. We're about 6 miles west of Chubb's Head. Just checking in with you, over.
Roger, Valkyrie. Many thanks. And if you require any other information on your way up, you can call me directly here on 27. Welcome to Bermuda. Bermuda Harbor Radio, clear. Standing by 1627.
2 years ago, we were looking at stacks of aluminum sitting on a concrete floor on a cold November day in New York, and here we are on a not so cold November day going into Bermuda on this fine vessel.
When you're several days into a blue water passage, the sound of a land-based voice over the radio can be very comforting, especially if that voice belongs to a man with an uncanny ability to predict weather patterns at sea. On our last stop, Captain Glenn Allen checked in with Herb Hilgenberg, who runs a volunteer radio service he calls Southbound 2. Every day, Herb provides custom weather and wind predictions, which are often so accurate that many sailors rely on his advice more than any other single source of weather information.
Suburban street to harbor a lifeline to small boats on the Atlantic and Caribbean.
Okay, the extended outlook.
This is Herb Hilgenberg, and from his basement, he's in daily contact with dozens of eager listeners.
I live with the Atlantic weather, the Caribbean weather, the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific. I live with it. I know how it changes.
An accomplished steel silver lining, Herb began analyzing weather data.
There you see our first possible tropical depression forming.
And then began to broadcast to a select audience.
Over.
Okay, I copied that, Herb. I copied that. Thank you very much.
Peter Menzel's done 4 Atlantic crossings and used Herb every time.
There's hardly anybody who can interpret weather reports as well as he does. Because on one occasion, on one trip, he regularly called upcoming depressions and gales 2 days before the official weather stations did.
Herb has a fleet of admirers. After speaking at the U.S. Naval Academy, he was described as probably the best analyst of North Atlantic weather and sea conditions. And the Canadian Coast Guard agrees.
His services to us, you know, you couldn't put a dollar figure on it, but it's incredible the amount of help that he gives us.
What makes Herb so special? What does he do that far bigger organizations don't? Well, his 5-day forecasts are highly personalized, aimed at just one tiny boat on a huge ocean.
I look at the vast amount of information that is readily available, and I analyze it in order to come up with a forecast designed, custom tailored for that person. Nobody else does that.
Herb's house is festooned with satellite dishes and transmitters. His basement crammed with expensive equipment. In peak season, he'll help up to 80 boats a day, 7 days a week. And yes, he does it for nothing. It's a hobby.
I'm retired, so I enjoy doing this.
And Herb's hobby can be a matter of life and death for the sailors who depend on him.
You can't measure the number of incidents that he's prevented by giving good weather forecasting and voyage planning.
So from what was once the family's laundry room, Herb continues his broadcasts, as grateful sailors hope he will for years to come.
Fine. Thank you very much, Herb, and we'll be in touch.
From us this evening, how Herb Hilgenberg became a weatherman. 20 years ago, he took his family sailing on the North Atlantic. He had checked the weather reports before leaving. So when a violent storm reared up and threatened to capsize their boat, he was, to say the least, totally surprised. They made it to safety, and Herb found his calling. Here's ABC's James Walker.
On board the yacht Will See off the Carolina coast, the Reed family sails alone. The weather on the Atlantic can be unpredictable, so the Reeds keep an extra set of eyes on watch.
We'll see. This is Victor Alpha X-Ray 498.
Good afternoon, Herb.
Reed checks in with Herb Hilgenberg.
Off Cape Lookout Shoals.
Herb is the Reed's guardian angel at sea. This German-born retired engineer broadcasts from his home near Toronto. You can't miss his house. It's the one with the satellite dishes and the high-frequency radio antenna.
Fairly light conditions, over.
He calls this a hobby, but for 15 years, Herb Hilgenberg has spent 10 hours a day, 7 days a week in this room, providing personalized marine weather forecasts free of charge.
Moving towards the Bahamas.
Up to 90 commercial ships and ocean-going yachts check in with him every day.
Roger, what's your actual ladder long now, over?
We're currently at 34 degrees, 15.7 north.
Herb jots down their sea conditions, wind speed, and direction. He downloads gigabytes of weather data from the U.S., Canada, and Europe, digests them, and adds the critical ingredient, his experience.
I have been out there. I know what it's like to be beaten up. We could have gale to storm force winds there.
Just listening to his forecasts, for a few days in a row, you know how accurate he is.
So accurate that U.S. and Canadian search and rescue call him to find boats that are missing.
We've had those cases where we call Herb, and next we know that the case is solved.
I don't want anyone to get into the situation where he has to get rescued. That's what this is all about.
Herb was once asked how many lives he saved.
Roger, so you...
He counted to 25, then stopped. It was time to go on the air.
Hello, all stations. Hello, all stations.
James Walker,